research before you start dating someone. So I met this guy on Tinder, I want to say 2016, 2017. So like I said, I met this guy on Tinder, and when we first met, he's like, oh, I don't have any social media. And I'm like, that's great. Little did I know that was the first red flag in this whole thing. So we dated for a few months at first, and I was living at my aunt's house and I had to move out. So I was looking for like roommates. And obviously, you know, I share with him that I'm looking for a roommate, and he's like, why don't you move in with me until you find a roommate? So I worked at a restaurant, so we had kind of like off schedules. I was off Monday and Tuesday, and he was off on the weekends. He lived in a 2-bedroom house, and for some reason, every time he left, he would lock his second bedroom. And I'm like, well, you know what? That's kind of awkward. That's kind of suspicious. That's red flag number 2. Then every time we would go to the gas station, he would say, oh, don't get out. It's really cold. I'll go get whatever you need. And in my head, I'm like, oh my God, he is such a gentleman. Like, doesn't want me to get out because it's cold. Denial is a river in Egypt, let me tell you. Before I fast forward, let me tell you, I had this box at his house where I would stash my money, like my cash money, and then I would take it to the bank at the end of the month. Fast forward, I find roommates, so I have to move out. So when I move out, I only have literally just my clothes. I had to buy like a new bed and all of that stuff. I forget the box at his house, and I'm like, hey, can you bring me my box with the money when you come over? And he's like, oh, I went ahead and put the money in my bank account because I didn't want anyone to come over and steal it. And I'm like, okay, well, I need that money to buy a bed and to buy the things that I need. So he's like, okay, well, today is Sunday. I will go to the bank tomorrow and get you the money. Comes Monday, he only gets me $1,000. There was a total of $4,000. Whatever. After this guy came very obsessive. Like, I would be at work and he would be outside in the parking lot watching me while I was working. Like, he would text me and be like, you're flirting too much with that guy at that table. And I'm like, what are you even talking about? He's like, yeah, I'm outside waiting for you, waiting until you get out. I didn't have a car, so he would like pick me up sometimes and drop me off. Go to part 2. So I thought I'd clarify. He lived in a smaller town than I did, and the gas station that I was talking about in my previous video is literally 2 houses down from his house. Fast forward, he became this like weird stalker, and I'm still with him. Like, I don't know what was going on in my head. My boss one day asked me to do a double, so basically work from 8 a.m. until 11 a.m. or earlier, depends the next day. So a full 24 hours. After my shift ended, he was outside waiting for me, and he's like, oh, I just came to pick you up so you can sleep over at my house tonight. I know you're very tired. So we got to his house. He's like, I have a golf tournament. He didn't even go inside. He opened the door for me. He's like, I have a golf tournament. I will see you at 3 p.m. So I get to his house and I see that his second bedroom is open. So I'm nosy. So I start looking, and there's a bunch of like paperwork and screenshots of like text messages. There were pictures of this girl, which I'm guessing is his ex. So I start reading the paperwork. I didn't really start reading the text messages. I start reading the paperwork, and it's like court paperwork. He got arrested for stalking his ex. I was in shock, honey. I was in tears. I'm like, what did I get myself into? So I keep on reading, and it said that he almost kidnapped her in his own house and forced her to have sex with him, to which she called the cops and he got arrested. He was in jail for like 6 months because of that and had a restraining order against him. And the audacity he had to once call the cops because we were arguing in my own apartment with my roommates, but that's another story. I got an Uber so damn fast and got out of there. I got home. 3 hours later, he texts me. He's like, where are you like going? I blocked him. Like, I had to block him because he sent me over 200 messages in less than an hour. I had to unblock him because he still owed me the $3,000, which never paid me. For like 4 months, he would call me at the restaurant and leave messages with my coworkers and started calling me from like private phone numbers and telling me that he's outside and that he sees all those men going in the house. Mind you, I live with roommates, 2 other girls. I had to tell him that I was going to get a restraining order against him if he didn't leave me alone, and never again, never called. 2 or 3 years later, he emailed me.
I'm about to cheat on my husband with his dad. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's me on Instagram. My husband is a little bit abusive, let me explain. We met 3 years ago when I was in college. Since then, he's always been really jealous and controls everything I do. After we got married, he basically told me that he didn't want me to work, so I haven't had a job for a year now. This means he wants me to be home all the time. I've managed to start doing certain things like take Pilates classes, I got into his salsa class, and I've managed to make a couple of friends near us. Now, the other bad thing is that we moved away when we got married. So I'm about 7 hours driving from my family. Because of this, I've become very close to my father-in-law. My mother and father-in-law divorced about 2 years ago. I don't get along with her because she thinks that my husband is perfect, and every time I complain about him, she just gets mad. But his dad understands me. He notices how jealous and controlling my husband is, so he tells him all the time he needs to give me time and space. Well, I started falling for my father-in-law. Let me just say something. This man is so handsome. He's so successful and has it together. My husband is really handsome, but the way he controls me just turns me off to the point where I don't let him touch me. And this just makes him angrier. Part 2 is up. I'm about to cheat on my husband with his dad. Because my husband is so controlling and jealous, I became closer to my father-in-law. It's gotten to the point where I don't even let my husband touch me anymore. Anytime he comes near me, he gets so aggressive and always tries to kiss me even if I don't want him to. And every time I go to a dance class or to Pilates, he starts calling me to make sure that I'm there, even though he has my location turned on, so he knows where I am at all times. And because my husband has my location all the time, he never gets suspicious when I'm at his dad's house. So my father-in-law and I have been spending a lot of time together. When my husband goes off to work, I invite him over and we start talking about his son. And I basically complain to him the whole time about how controlling and jealous he is. But every time he comes over, actual tension between us is so real. My father-in-law invited me to go to the gym with him, so I've been working out with him every single day. And that's made us even closer. A few nights ago, I invited him over again. And that's when I told him the truth that I was attracted to him. That's when he told me that even though we were both attracted to each other, we needed to control our feelings. But I kissed him. Part 3 is up. That's when I started making out with my father-in-law. At that point, I couldn't control myself. We had spent so much time together and bonded over his abusive son, my husband. After I kissed him, we just stared at each other. Mind you, we've only really known each other for about a year. And the whole time I've been with his son, I've always complained to him about how jealous and controlling he is. And how unsatisfied I am because I never let his son touch me. That's when he comes over and kisses me. Something almost happened when we laid down on the couch and started making out, but he stopped himself. I could see in his face how disappointed he was, but he also knows how unhappy I am to be married to his son. That's when I told him that I would get divorced from his son. Then he confessed that his son has been cheating on me for 3 weeks with one of his employees. Apparently, my husband promised him that he would leave her, but hasn't. What do you guys think I should do?